Hi, I'm Stephen Hopkins, and this is Veterans Day, so I'd like to do something very special for someone who's become very special to me, my uncle, Montel Hopkins. Actually, his first name was Ivan, so it would be Ivan Montel Hopkins. My dad, his brother, never spoke about him very much, but he did show me his picture a couple of times. Now that photograph was of a man in a white Navy uniform with some stripes on his sleeve. Now I don't know what happened to that picture, but between those times as a child and this year, that's about all I knew about my uncle. Now Ann and I celebrated our 40th anniversary this year in Hawaii, and it was absolutely wonderful. Now, since Dad had said that Montel had gone down on a ship in the Navy early in the war, I thought perhaps maybe he had gone down on a ship in the Pacific, perhaps maybe even there at Pearl Harbor. So I searched carefully through every blue memorial board throughout all the alphabetized names for any mention of any variation of his name. Now there were several men listed with my last name, Hopkins, on at least a half a dozen ships, including the Arizona and the Oklahoma. But his name was not listed on anything at Pearl Harbor. Well, as you might expect, I couldn't just let it end, not knowing what had happened to him. So I began searching the internet for any trace of him. And then, after a while, there it was, on an obscure burial listing amongst a couple of hundred others from Lauderdale County, Tennessee, where he was born. That's when I first learned that his first name was Ivan, and that he had been born May 22nd, 1903, 11 years before my father, Joseph Palmer Hopkins.
Henning, Tennessee.
You know, that's where Alex Haley, the Roots author, had been born. Maybe their paths had crossed at the corner market. Anyway, in Dad's family, everybody seemed to be called by their middle name, Montel Palmer. It must have been a family thing. So, fast forward to July 6, 1919. My dad had been born 4 years before that, and the Great War was now over. So 16-year-old Montel Hopkins joined the United States Marine Corps. Perhaps one of these recruiting posters filled his mind with dreams far beyond those of the cotton fields of West Tennessee. Now I know this because I pulled up the 1920 Bremerton, Washington Census report and found his name listed in the Marine Barracks. It was the same for the 1930 and the 1940 census reports. Now after World War I, the War Department realized how effective submarine warfare had been for Germany, and they began building their own bevy of submarines with the necessary torpedoes to arm them with. Recruit Ivan M. Hopkins, as the Marines must have called him, was assigned to the torpedo squadron in Bremerton. Now this meant that they were responsible for the storage, the maintenance, the loading and unloading of torpedoes for the submarines on the West Coast for the Navy. Let's fast forward again to 1940, when FDR was trying to prepare America for war with Japan. The Marines were expanding Camp Pendleton near San Diego, California. So by this time, Sergeant Ivan Hopkins had 21 years of service in, so he transferred to that base and was assigned to the rifle range, Edson, I believe, as an instructor. Every Marine a rifleman, as the saying goes. Now this must have been quite a culture shock for the Marine from West Tennessee by way of Puget Sound. Now pre-war San Diego was booming. From just a little over 80,000 in 1886, by 1940 there were 250,000 people living and working in greater San Diego. Camp Pendleton was expanding almost daily. The Navy had built a Navy Yard just south of the Marine camp, and the aircraft industry was revving up to build all sorts of planes. And there were all kinds of entertainment for an off-duty sergeant like Ivan in San Diego. Maybe he even watched a baseball game at Lane Field, where the local team played. Pacific Square, Mission Beach, Balboa Park, the Balboa Theater offered all sorts of entertainment for thousands of servicemen and women. A place called Fat City was just being finished, but we'll get back to that. Now, during the summer of 1941, Glenn Miller and his orchestra were playing at Pacific Square. Blood and Sand, starring the future Marine Tyrone Power, was playing at the Balboa. Citizen Kane was packing them in. Hope and Crosby were making appearances at the ballpark. 2 Hollywood productions were actually being filmed at the Marine Recruit Depot. March On Marines, starring Dennis Morgan, and the more familiar To the Shores of Tripoli, starring John Payne and Maureen O'Hara. It is possible that Ivan, being a senior non-com, could have helped the productions in some way, or actually been in the background of the scenes that were shot at the rifle range. And so it seems that Ivan had traded the humdrum life of Bremerton for the fast-paced excitement of San Diego. But this is where our story darkens. In August, late August I guess, in between recruitment classes, I guess the non-coms got the Labor Day weekend off on 3-day passes. I'm sure some went north to Los Angeles and some down to Tijuana, Mexico. Ivan, Ralph Dultra, and William Manning, all sergeants, took off for a good time in a late model sedan. Now I don't know what the make of the car was that they were driving, but there were some really hot cars in 1941, the last of the pre-war models. By the end of 1941, Detroit would be retooling for trucks, jeeps, and tanks for the war effort. But on Labor Day weekend, 1941, there were a lot of cars of every description and a lot of trucks everywhere in San Diego, everybody trying to get somewhere in a hurry. Anyway, I don't know what they were driving. I don't know who was driving. But I do think I know where they were going. To that new place down on Pacific and Balboa, which is Grand Avenue now. It's still called Fat City to this very day. It's a big Art Deco building that housed several restaurants and entertainment venues that were frequented by big-name entertainers. It was just a block off the beach, and the sun was probably drifting down into one of those beautiful San Diego harbor sunsets. They were headed for what they thought would be a great time. Unfortunately, while they were traveling probably too fast down Balboa Avenue, Chester D. Gunn, age 51, was driving a truck down Pacific Avenue, probably on his last stop before he quit work for the holiday weekend. When the vehicles collided, witnesses said that the truck struck the car in such a way with such force that the car went airborne and flipped 3 times before it came to a halt about a block down the PCH from where the accident began. It was a horrible start to a holiday weekend, According to the San Diego Union the next day, there were 3 accidents with 4 killed, including my uncle, Ivan Montel Hopkins, and the date was August 30th, 1941. The death certificate from the coroner of San Diego County says that the cause of death was bleeding from the lung and the liver, probably from broken ribs. Whether or not Ivan was the driver of the car is inconclusive. Since there were no seatbelts at the time, he could have been thrown from the vehicle. At any rate, my Uncle Ivan died at the scene, 13 years before I was ever born. This year, after my visit to Pearl Harbor, I have searched through thousands of pictures, military training videos, movies, and the like, searching for any trace of my uncle, Staff Sergeant Ivan M. Hopkins. And this is what I found. Now, in the spring of 1941, the Marines changed their daily uniform from olive drab green to a khaki color uniform. Now, Life magazine sent Dmitry Cassell, a noted photographer, to San Diego to shoot photographs of all the new uniforms for all the branches of services: the officers, the enlisted men, the band, and even the Navy ship stewards. Now, after sifting through as many of the remaining photographs as I could, one stood out for 3 very particular reasons. A, it's from Cassell's shoot in 1941, San Diego. B, it's of a middle-aged Marine Staff Sergeant. And C, most importantly, it looks a great deal like me. And now, after over a year of research, I am very proud of that image, and I'm very proud of his 22 years of service in the United States Marine Corps. And I'm very proud of the men and women who serve now and have served this country for the last 240 years. Now, there are some lessons to be learned here. First, get to know your veterans, the ones in your family, even the ones in your neighborhood as well. Second, listen to what they tell you. It could possibly be the only accurate account of events available after they're gone. And third, and probably most importantly, love your veterans. They've earned it. They deserve it. And this country has been, is, and always will be dependent upon their service. So on this day, this Veterans Day, God bless you all, and God bless America.